Good people, thank you for joining me. I am your host, Desmond Upshaw. This is another edition of the All Go podcast. So, wanted to get right into it and talk about Carson Wentz. He is now an Indianapolis Colt. The Philadelphia Eagles are taking number one, $33 million in dead cap. They are giving up a third round pick in this year's draft and a conditional second round pick in the 2022 draft, which could be a first round pick if Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps or if he plays 70% of the snaps and the Colts make the playoffs. So, to me, I mean, this was just a tough situation for Philly. I think we are seeing a trend and a movement of just player mobility in the NFL that we traditionally haven't really seen as often. I mean, you look at, a guy like Matt Stafford who was traded this year, this offseason with basically coming to Detroit and just saying that he wanted out. It was a mutual separation, but same with the Rams and Jared Goff. Like, it was something that they both wanted to, make that transition. You still have Deshaun Watson who's in Houston, but has made it very clear that he wants out there as well. So it's a very different offseason, very unique in regards to the amount of quarterbacks that are on the move that aren't free agents. Like, these guys are under contract quarterbacks that you would think are going to be still at their current teams, but have moved on. So, Philly had their hands tied. They had a guy who just wasn't happy. I mean, he's got to kind of look in the mirror a little bit. I mean, you didn't get benched for no reason. Carson Wentz played pretty bad, especially towards, down the stretch, and Jalen Hurts didn't. Really, in the NFL, it comes down to a large part of it is just not turning the ball over. That's a big part of playing quarterback in the NFL. And if you're a guy that continuously does that, and there were some throws that Carson Wentz made this past season that I'm not even sure who he was trying to get the ball to, and just turning the ball over, fumbling, throwing interceptions. Like, there's just not much you can do. You're tying the hands of your coach because it's so hard to win a game if you're going to turn the ball over. Most games you can look at and just see the team that wins the turnover battle. You can, if that was the only stat that you had, more times than not you're gonna win that. You're gonna win the guess of who won that game. So for Carson Wentz, he got out. I think he got into the best situation that he could get into with the Indianapolis Colts. Frank Reich is the head coach, who was the offensive coordinator the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, as well as, I believe, when Carson was on his MVP-like season before he had his knee injury. So I believe Frank Reich was there as well. So as far as, the hope for success, like the best prediction of success is let's go back to the guy that I was with when I had the most success. So Indianapolis is loaded as a team. They've got run game with Jonathan Taylor, running back out of Wisconsin. He's coming into his second year. I think he was the third leading rusher last year. They have a solid O-line. Jack Doyle at tight end. I believe Trey Burton at the other tight end. T.Y. Hilton is a free agent, but with the first round pick you have, you can draft another weapon for Carson. Defensively, they're really good. They got Justin Houston, DeForest Buckner. Like, these Indianapolis could potentially have a very, very good situation on their hands, but a lot of it's gonna depend on if Carson Wentz can play well. Like, he's just not showing the ability to play well overall. When you look at his career and where he is, he's played poorly more often than he's played very well. He had that stretch of, I believe it was 13 games, something like that, to where he was on that MVP, trajectory. Hurts his knee. By the time he comes back, he's just not the same guy. And I don't even think it has anything to do with athleticism. I think his decision-making was poor. And this past season, it was very poor. So you had a guy in a second-round pick in Jalen Hurts, who's a very steady young man, consummate professional, just does things the right way, mature, and he played pretty well, especially when you consider he was kind of thrown in the fire a little bit. So it's interesting. I'm not sold with as good as Indianapolis is. I'm still not sold that they're gonna win the Super Bowl or anything like that, because I just don't see Carson Wentz flipping a switch and all of a sudden becoming a very different quarterback than he was in Philadelphia. He's probably going to be that same guy. Now he may improve a little bit, but overall I don't believe that he's going to be that MVP type guy that we saw, I think, in 2017. I just don't think you're going to get that. And you may not need it, but I think more often than not, you're probably going to get the guy who turns the ball over a lot, holds it too long, and makes bad decisions. I hope the best for him, wish the best for him. Wish the best for, hopefully, Jalen Hurts kind of solidifies that that starting quarterback job with Philly. But we'll see what happens. It's a pretty interesting trade, and I think this is something that just kind of is piggybacking on our NFL offseason. So it's pretty crazy. You got Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, Phillip Rivers retiring, potentially Drew Brees retiring. I don't think he's made that official yet. Deshaun Watson still wants out. You've got potential landing spots for him in Miami, which could potentially have Tua going to Houston. So a lot of stuff going on. So it's been a pretty good offseason as far as things to talk about. So that part's pretty cool. So stay tuned. Please like and subscribe. If you feel compelled, leave a comment. Would love to hear from you. I usually am pretty good about responding to that stuff. So would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for joining me and sticking around to the end. I'm your host, Desmond. Have a good one.